Not a lot of controversial things to come out of the weekend, which is a good thing. So I thought I'd take the opportunity today just to point out a couple of things that have happened in the round of football that are worthwhile revisiting and explaining. They are things that have come up before, and certainly in the case of the first few incidents that I'll take you through, we did talk about at the beginning of the year. And we'll move straight into that. And this was in the area of what we call sleepers. Now, sleepers, of course, is just another word for obstruction, but in round 22, the round just completed, we did see a number of instances where this took place and where referees correctly took action. And if you recall, going right back to the start of the season, we talked about a whole range of various areas of focus for the match officials, and we saw a lot of these practices disappear. Just so happens that in this round we've seen a number of them reappear, and the referees took the action, so hopefully we won't see them repeat in the coming weeks. But this whole issue of sleepers, it's worth revisiting what the rule says. And if you look here in point B on the screen, in the obstruction at the play of the ball or in the defensive line. So B, in general play, if a player stands in the defensive line of the opposition or is in front of the play of the ball and in the opinion of the referee obstructs defenders regardless of whether there is physical contact. So that was the policy directive that was given at the beginning of the year. We sent videos out to clubs from last year with examples from last year showing them what was and what wasn't acceptable, and this was the rule that was incorporated into the documentation that went out to all the clubs at the start of the year. So let's have a look at some of these things that took place across the course of the weekend. And in this first incident, just refer you, I won't refer to particular players because we've got obviously players moving all around the field, but if you keep your eye on this player from the Storm in possession and watch what happens as he moves across the field and gets himself into a position in front of the ruck and adjacent or beside the play the ball, and you'll see that the defenders there from the ruck who try to chase the ball as the dummy half passes off the ruck. Defenders move sideways and they are blocked by the player who's standing in front of the ruck, and that's what we call a sleeper in the ruck. So that's one example. We'll move on to the next one. Referee penalises, as you'll see. In this particular example, you'll see two players here, there and there, who are in front of the play of the ball. Obviously the ball's being played down here. If you watch these two players as the ball's played, so they've both moved into a position directly in line with the ruck. And again, you know, they may well be just trying to get out of the way, but what takes place from here is from dummy half, the ball's picked up, and in this case James Tedesco goes very close to those players, and you see in that case trying to evade by dodging out of the way, and then defenders there trying to cut across, and there's another Roosters player in the way, and James goes straight through that gap. Again, you can see the referee blowing the penalty. In the next example, in this particular case, again, we've got players here who are from the Titans in possession, the ball being played back here, and we'll let it run. And again, they're in and around the ruck, they're in front of the ruck, side by side in this case. Ball gets played. Again, you see the marker as he tries to move across from here. There again is a Titans player in the way, and although the tackle takes place a bit further on, you can see the referee with the arm up for, again, a correct penalty. And in this particular example, a little bit different, because we've got a player quite wide here who's virtually beside the referee at that point. Play the ball is closer towards the sideline, 20 metres in from touch. And again, if you watch what happens here when we play. So standing out there in the defensive line, Now, if the ball, at this point, if the ball goes right across the back line, it's probably not a massive issue for the referee if the ball goes towards the far touchline, but we'll see what happens. And you can see that the ball, or the ball carrier, goes straight up the centre of the field, and if you see where the referee was and where the other Storm player was directly beside the referee, that opens up that gap. So the referee already takes a position in the defensive line, which creates a gap, and then beside him you've got the Storm player that creates a bigger gap. And if you see where the line gets busted here, it's right beside the referee where the other Storm player was until a few seconds ago. And so again, the referee arm goes up for a penalty. So when we talk about sleepers in the ruck and why the referees are penalising them, it's because of the interference that it creates with the defenders. And sleepers is really just another word for obstruction. So they're creating an obstruction to the defence. And you might say, well, they have to come back onside. What should they do? Well, firstly, they should make sure that they get back onside as quickly as possible, and if that's not possible, they need to stay well out of the defensive line. So they should be staying further beyond the defensive line so that they're not actually creating a gap in the defensive line or creating an obstruction. Any questions on that one?
Is that a coincidence that there were so many in so many different games on the weekend? Or?
I think it is. I think it is a coincidence. We haven't seen much of it since the start of the year. We were seeing a fair bit of it last year, and that's why the policy was introduced this year. I think we were seeing it tactically used last year in some cases, not in all cases. And you can see in even some of these incidents, the players are not necessarily trying to interfere with the defence, but it's a natural instinct for the ball carrier. If they can see a gap created by one of their own players, they're going to try and go through it. So I think that, I'm not saying that these are deliberate ploys, but where they take place, regardless of the reason, if players find themselves in that position, then they are likely to be penalised if they interfere with the defence.